all perception is misperception. This morning we're going to go on a journey, continue our journey of finding spiritual wholeness and looking at the storms that are in our lives, not from a lens of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but looking at the storms in our lives with clear spiritual vision. We've been on this journey of finding wholeness now for a couple of weeks, and we began this idea, first off, what is spiritual wholeness? Well, it's that true nature that's within us. That's that spiritual essence, that spark of divinity, whatever you want to call it, but it's that true nature that we live from and that we're seeking to pull out in our lives. And throughout this talk series, we started with the idea of becoming friendly, of understanding that wholeness, understanding our union, that common union that we have with each other. We began with at base camp with some basic skills, right? The skills of loving, learning to love, bless, to do good, and to pray in our lives. Those were the skills that we were going to use along this spiritual adventure. And we began to start becoming comfortable with the idea of conflict, becoming comfortable that sometimes there are things in our lives that happen and it's okay. Along our first journey, we discovered the first attribute of wholeness, which is communion. That is knowing our oneness, knowing that common union that we have with each other, knowing our unity with all of life, love, and wisdom, our unity with God, our unity with each other. And we use the tool of forgiveness to realign ourselves to that idea that we are here to express that spiritual wholeness, that we can express that wholeness anytime in our lives, regardless of what's happening around us. That tool helped us to clear out whatever blocks we might have had, the blocks that prevent us from knowing our oneness with God, from knowing our sacred worth, from knowing our oneness with each other. Clearing out all of those blocks so that we can be in those storms and stand in our power with courage and strength. Now, the reality is there will be storms in our lives, right? In this human experience, there is change, there is conflict, there is confusion at times. All of those things exist. And when we learn to look at it from a certain perspective, from a spiritual perspective, we can be in that situation, in those storms, but not feel diminished by them. We can be in those storms and not feel like we are being tossed along the rocks, being thrown along the shore. We can be in that experience of the storm, but be in the center of it. Be at the center where we are at peace, where we are whole, where we are one. And so we're going to begin that journey today by looking at how we can see that experience of the storm for what it is and see ourselves and others in the storm, see them rightly without trying to fix everything. We've been using the book along our journey of The Eye of the Storm, Embracing Conflict and Creating Peace by Dr. Gary Simmons. And in this book, he helps us define this idea of what we mean by this eye of the storm. Right, the metaphor is, of course, in the eye of the hurricane, there is peace. It's beautiful. It's amazing. On the circumference, outside of the eye, outside of the center, is where all heck is breaking loose. Now, that's where we tend to live as human beings. We tend to live in that circumference. We tend to live in that storm. And we live in that storm because we are resisting and we're fighting against the people, the situations. We're fighting against that other. We're fighting against the storm. Whatever is happening in our life, we're fighting against it. And that's when we get thrown along the rocks. And what's interesting is when we're in that storm, what we're looking at, or how we're experiencing it, is a result of us living in those missing puzzle pieces within us, right? Those missing pieces within us that are created by our belief systems that we grew up with. You know, the BS that we were taught, the BS that the society tells us, that a 19th or 20th century society tells us we should be. The BS that has been embedded within us. That false sense of not being enough, that false sense of not being good enough, those habitual patterns that come up with us whenever we're in the storm, whenever something happens, right? We tend to go towards that habitual reaction pattern of defensiveness, of redirection, of blame, of firing our own missiles across the bow. We tend to go into that experience of those unconscious beliefs of not enough, or that embedded pattern of blame, shame, and guilt. That which has been embedded in us, which is not the truth of who we are. Yes, we may experience that along the way, but that's not the truth of who you are. You are a spiritual being made in the image and likeness of all that is, of the source, of the substance, of the infinite flow of life, love, and wisdom of God. And when we become friends with that concept, we can be in that storm and see the world through a different lens. Now, part of the problem is not only are we seeing the conflict from our own missing puzzle pieces, right, what's missing within us, we're also seeing the conflict through someone else's missing puzzle pieces, because it's so easy for us to acknowledge or to find their missing puzzle pieces, isn't it? It may be hard for me to know where all of mine are. I've got some blind spots here. But when I look at someone else in a conflict, oh, I know exactly where they are. If you would only do this, if you would only think this way, if you would only be this way. We're trying to fix them. We're trying to fix the situation. Instead of making it right, we need to be able to see it right. Now, in his book, Dr. Simmons said this: we have a chance in we have a chance in how we interpret our life experience. Perhaps this is our major contribution to the quality of our lives. Our explanations, assumptions, and judgments mediate how we relate to a given situation. The poignant observation led me to the following realization: I make my life mean what it means. The way I choose to relate to my experience is what my experience becomes. The quality of my life, its inherent ambience, arises from within me. So let's take a deep breath as we realize that that practice, that principle that Rusty talked about earlier, that law of mind action, that those things that we give great attention to, is how we live our life. That's the lens through which we see our life. And so the good news is we have a choice. The challenge is we want to be right. Right? We're stuck in our beliefs. And even if we have an inkling that, yeah, I'm not quite right, I'm stuck in my bunker still because, like heck, if I'm going to lose to you, right? We get stuck in the way we have these conversations. And so in this aspect of wholeness, we're relating not from our sense of wholeness, not from our sense of that divine spark, that essence within us, not from knowing our unity with each other. I'm attacking you from the missing pieces. And I'm relating to you from your missing pieces. So instead of trying to make it right, we need to see it right. During these times, we tend to interpret someone else's behaviors. Someone has a behavior. Maybe it's, someone comes up and you're all, hey, how's it going? What's up? And they're like, hi. Now, we're not just going to sit there and listen to that. We're going to make a story out of it, aren't we? Isn't that the natural human behavior? What did he mean by that hi? What did she mean by what's up? We start layering our stories on top of it. And we start to see the world through that lens of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, rather than seeing it as someone just said hello, rather than seeing it as the simple data. The second attribute of wholeness is the idea of principle. So on this journey, as we're coming into these storms, as we're seeing them approach, as we're in them, in the middle of them, what we need to do is come back to this idea in this energy of principle. Now, what do we mean by principle? Dr. Simmons says principle is another way of describing the nature of the universe. It's order and intelligence. It's another word for God. Truth principles, which is what we talk about here, right? This is what we talk about in terms of what we learn and what we teach. We're teaching truth principles as we best understand them. And truth principles are ideas that organize our attention and awareness upon the ever-present, unchanging order which manifests itself as God's plan for good. Truth principles, the truth that is unchanging, that idea of God as principle, meaning God is unchanging. God is the unchanging law of prosperity. God is the unchanging law of consciousness. God is the unchanging allness of life. God is the allness of wisdom. God is the allness of knowledge. It's not that God knows everything, but God is the allness of knowledge. All wisdom is contained in there, and therefore it's unchanging. And if God is this energy of love, God is this energy of connection, God is this energy of communion, then we're always one with it. It is unchanging. What changes is our lens through which we are seeing things, seeing our life. And so it's important for us to really take hold of that idea and start to see the world from a new perspective. Now, Dr. Simmons says there are two types of truth principles. There are faith-based truth principles and love-based truth principles. Faith-based principles organize your attention and awareness on the presence of God in every situation. So when you're in the middle of the storm and you're being battered across the rocks, right, when the missiles are flying back and forth, faith-based principles allows us to say, wait a minute, there's something more here. There might be another way to look at it. There could be another way to perceive what's happening here, another way to see myself in the situation and to see the other in the situation, or see, something different in the diagnosis, or see something different, in this experience of the death of a loved one, or see something different in the experience of just getting pulled off, being cut off on the freeway. From the little things to the big things, faith-based principles open our thoughts and minds to something new. There might be some other possibility that we can learn from and grow from here. Where love-based principles organize our attention and awareness on our oneness with God and all of life. Love is that harmonizing energy, right? And love-based principles brings us back into harmony within ourselves, brings us back into harmony with that principle of the ever-flowing expression of life, love, and wisdom, brings us back into harmony with that idea of communion, of common union, of unity with one another. It's that harmonizing, attracting power that brings us together. Now, in the midst of change, confusion, and conflict, it can be very difficult to understand our spiritual wholeness. Because in life, there's lots of stuff going on and lots of things that are going to take us in different directions. And this could be in any perspective, like the little things in life. That's a great place to start. I'm always recommending that we start with the little things in life. Now, most of the time, we just ignore them, right? We get a little perturbed, but we shut it down. We get a little perturbed, and we gossip about it a little bit. We talk about it. So instead of letting it go, just take a moment to reflect on it. Just take a moment to look on it, whether it's the falling out of a relationship, whether it's an experience of a diagnosis or an experience of the death of a loved one. There are all kinds of things that happen in our lives. From that blame, shame, and guilt cycle. Excuse me. I used to think that it was all we need to do was become curious, right? Become curious. Well, maybe there's some other way to look at it. But then I thought about it. What's the first thing you do when somebody throws an insult at you, or when somebody does something that you think is crazy? my first thought is, what in the wide, wide world of sports is that person thinking? Now that's curiosity, right? We're like, what are you thinking? Why aren't you looking at it the way I would look at it? Why are you looking at it from that perspective? Curiosity through the lens of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, through the lens of competition, through the lens of I've got to be right, I've got to make it right, I've got to fix them, rather than curiosity from the lens of how can I see this differently? And so I decided to change it. The idea is maybe intentional curiosity or changing your lens, how to change your lens in the midst of the conflict. When you're being battered against the wall, how do you change your lens at that point? Now, there's a great parable in the Bible by the master teacher Jesus when he talks about turn the other cheek. You have heard it said, an eye for an eye. But I say to you, do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on the left cheek, turn your right cheek as well. Now, the meaning of that is not become a doormat. The meaning of that is not give up and do whatever that evil person says. The meaning of that is turn the other cheek in consciousness. Turn your lens. If you are feeling insulted, if you're feeling slapped, then it's time for you to say, okay, now's the time. This is the part in the conflict where I can turn the other cheek. And so that I can make friends with conflict and learn what's involved in it and find out what I can do to grow and what I can do to create a new experience. Through the lens, so the questions are that we can ask, what lens am I seeing this conflict through? What lens am I experiencing this through? Just start to name them. Because as soon as you name them, you're not caught up in them. As soon as you start to name them, they don't become a part of who you are. You're right, they're not guiding you anymore. Am I seeing this conflict from the perspective of what's missing in my own life? Am I looking at it through my own missing puzzle pieces? Right? The holes, the wounds that I have? Am I looking at the other person or this situation through their missing puzzle pieces? Am I focused so much on their wounds, on what's missing within them, instead of looking at the wholeness within me? Instead of looking at all of the good within me, instead of looking at all the good within them? Am I looking at it from a perspective of inner peace, or am I looking at it from a perspective of conflict? Am I looking at it and can I see the other person in a situation from coming at me from their missing pieces? And if I'm seeing missing pieces in other people, if I'm seeing the holes in them, where am I like that? There are mirror in this conflict for me to identify where my missing resources are. And then how can I fill those resources? How can I give myself that missing self-love, that missing self-compassion, that missing sense of, you know what, you made a mistake, it's okay, we move on. How can I give myself those inner resources to heal, to grow, to fill in the missing pieces that is in the situation? Now, this past week, I had a couple of spiritual coaching calls. And we were working on this idea, working on these practices. The first one was from a colleague, a guy who called me and said, you know, I've got a colleague, and he is just not being friendly with me anymore. You know, we've been hanging out, we're friends, but recently, you know, he's been coming in, and I'd say, hey, how's it going? And he's like, fine, I'm good. And then off he goes. You know, he's not really engaging with me like he used to. And so I asked him, well, was there anything that you did? And he looked back and said, well, I think he might have, be upset about a decision that I made a couple of months ago. And so I thought that maybe he was upset about that decision, and he's being frustrated with me, and he's being short with me. And gosh, maybe the whole department thinks I've made a bad decision. What if I made a bad decision? And I said, okay. So the data is somebody said hi and walked away. But the story you're creating out of it is that everyone's mad at you. Just as soon as I said that, his light bulb went on and went, of course. So the next question is, can we look at it through a new lens? Can we look at it through the lens of, is there anything else possible? Is there anything else that's possible in this situation? Sure, boy, he could have had a bad day at home. Something could have happened on his drive in. Maybe he's late on a project. I don't know. There's something that I don't know about it. And then I asked him, well, was there anything that you did that you could have done differently? And he said, well, no, I did my best. I stood in my ground. And then the light bulb went on again. It's like, okay, I'm going to continue to stay in my values. I'm going to continue to greet him warmly. I'm going to continue to live that way and follow my guidance. And that was the self-forgiveness coming into play in that moment, in that instant. And the forgiveness for the other person, it's okay. Sometimes we're going to have those moments. And then immediately he went into, now's the time to bless him. I said, fantastic, take it away. And so we said a little prayer. We said a little blessing. We held a truth principle for that other person. Knowing our common unity. In our forgiveness class, we might look at it as, I fully and freely forgive you. I loose and release you. And I see your good going to you with ease and grace. I see you whole spiritually. I see you finding your peace. The second call came in. It was actually kind of impromptu, but we started talking about, this person was talking about a lifelong friend of hers. Somebody who's been a friend for 20 years or so. And the relationship has changed over time. And that person is now, whenever I say something, I want to express something that's happening within me or tell a story or talk about me. Well, that person always comes back with, well, that happened to me, but 5 times worse. And here's what happened to me. And how this was a consistent pattern. And the person I was speaking with, coaching, said, well, maybe I need to let go of the relationship. Maybe it needs to become, a once or twice a year relationship instead of, an every week or every day relationship. And I said, well, tell me more about, why that is. And she said, well, it's not a forgiveness issue. I was okay. Was what she's saying causing resentment? Yes. Then it's a forgiveness issue. Oh. Okay, so how can I look at it differently? So she started to talk about how, well, what I need in the relationship is to be heard. What I need in the relationship is to have a deeper conversation. What I need in the relationship is to be able to have an equal amount of time speaking. Sounds all natural. And then I asked her to shift one thing, shift the word need to want. Just change the lens a little bit. She thought about it for a little bit. I want to have a deeper relationship. Now I asked her, now go in and just energetically, silently, see how it feels. What's the difference between need, you need something, and you want something? The need is coming from out there. I want them to change. The want is coming from within here. I want a deeper connection. So that's different. The lens started to shift. Instead of the ideas of, well, I thought I would go up to her and say, well, that's nice. Now back to my story. That passive-aggressive move, right? Because we want the other person to change. And that's what's causing our resentment. That's what's causing our stress, is that the other person isn't changing. So instead of that, it was just like, well, what if I asked, hey, can we have a deeper relationship? I asked her, well, what's the possibility of that? Maybe, maybe not. And that's reality, right? Maybe, maybe not. At any point in time, you and I might have a great conversation. I might be willing and open and able, and at other times, I may not be. So, how do you hold that relationship? That's up to you to decide how you move forward with that relationship, but moving forward, again, from that place of union, from unity, from here's my values, here's what I'd like to see in the conversation, and here's what's happening, and then decide where you decide to go. The irony is, at the end of the conversation, I said, okay, I need to go pick up my daughter to take her to dance. And she said, is it a need or a want? Oh, man. I got caught in my own spiritual teaching. Is it a need or a want? The blessing in that is I really started to think about that. Well, it's not a need, right? It's really a want, because I want my daughter to go to dance. I want my daughter to feel like she was taken care of. I want my family to be happy with me. But that's still a judgment. That's still putting some restrictions out there. That's still wanting to change them or modify their experience. Versus, what if I just said, I have to go change it? What if I just said, it's time for me to pick up my daughter to take her to dance? Feel how energetically different that is? There's no need, there's no want. What if I change it even further? It's time for us to end this conversation. What if I didn't even need to put in to take my daughter to dance? Because, to take my daughter to the dance is my excuse, because I got to go. I'm sorry, but I got to go. Right? We're still coming from that space of, I'm going to hurt somebody, I'm not enough. No, it's just, that's our time. I've got to go. End of story. Through this practice, the idea here is that we are returning back to that inner resource within us so that we can see the lens differently. So we can use a lens to see the world differently. So we can use a different spiritual lens so we can find the gifts in the conflict, so that we can see the possibilities for growth for ourselves and for others, if necessary, so that we can establish a sense of peace of mind within, so that I can be in the center of that storm, whatever storm that we're in. Let's go to our affirmation. The affirmation is on the screen, and I'm going to read it once and then invite you to affirm it with me. I free myself of limiting beliefs and conceptions that bind me to old conditions. I engage the world with the harmonizing energy of love. Purifying, renewing, vitalizing power of God is now at work. Would you affirm that with me together? I free myself of limiting beliefs and conceptions that bind me to old conditions. I engage the world with the harmonizing energy of love. The purifying, renewing, vitalizing power of God is now at work. And so it is. So on this journey, on this adventure of finding spiritual wholeness, remember our practices. Our practices to love, to bless, to do good, and to pray. Our practice of forgiveness to realign us with that which is already within us, that infinite source of life, love, and wisdom, so that we can stand strong in our power. And the practice of seeing it right, not making it right, of seeing it through a different lens, of changing the lens so that we can see with clear spiritual vision. Next week, we're going to be talking about the idea of living life from the standpoint of living on purpose, and the third attribute of spiritual wholeness.